hello to you all, my brilliant and wonderful listeners. This is BatBlood24 here to bring you another nostalgic trip to Cafe Yesterday. Today, we are serving up a classic show all the way back from 1995 on Cartoon Network, Dexter's Laboratory. Now, I'm sure we all remember that iconic show, that amazing theme, Dee Dee running roughshod all through his laboratory trying to destroy everything in sight, while Dexter is simply trying to complete his work, get his sister out, keep her out, all while doing some amazing, fantastic scientific work. But let me ask you this. How many of you actually remember just how deep that show was, especially its characters? Let's start with the title character himself, Dexter. Now, Dexter is a surprisingly complex individual. On the surface, he's obviously intelligent, a lover of science, a bit arrogant, slightly entitled, on occasions a little bit on the whiny side, and some might even call him a bit of a prick. But beneath that, he is someone who, like many of us, craves attention, friendship, acceptance, and popularity. There's even hints that for all the amazing things that he creates and builds, he's really just a lonely kid that wants to be accepted by his peers and have more friends. Which, by the way, he's not completely friendless. He has a few standouts, such as Mordecai, a recurring character from the show, who is frequently seen on the bus and sometimes at school, a fellow nerd much like himself. And he has a couple of friends that he regularly plays the copyright accepted version of Dungeons and Dragons, and Star Trek friends who sometimes they'll go to conventions, but those guys have never actually been named, come to think of it, which is actually rather interesting. But despite all of that, he is someone who really struggles to make new friends and even goes as far as using materials and his skills in the laboratory to try to make new friends that honestly don't appreciate him. They just want to use him for what he's had, which actually has happened in at least one or two episodes. And despite all of that, he keeps plugging ahead. For all of his mistakes, he is a kid, he is a genius, and he's arrogant. He's going to make mistakes. But despite all of that, the people around him never stop loving him. They may not be afraid to get on his case every now and again, be it his parents, some of his friends, or even occasionally his older sister Dee Dee herself. But they never stop loving him, even when he gives them every reason to want to beat the living daylights out of him. Starting with his older sister Dee Dee. I believe she is the very first person to actually discover his secret laboratory. How that actually happens is kind of ambiguous, but regardless, she is a rather interesting character. She comes off as a blonde ballerina ditz with ADHD and no concept of personal space or boundaries, clearly witnessed by the numerous times she breaks into his lab and just starts, well, breaking everything in sight. But to me, she is someone that is far more insightful and empathetic than she lets on. The biggest example, especially from earlier on in the series, comes from the Way of the Dee Dee episode. In that episode, she is, of course, running around his laboratory, messing things up. Dexter snaps at her, and she says, "You know what? I may not be as smart as you, but at least I know how to have fun out in the real world." Basically, she's telling him the kid needs to touch grass. She then gets on him and really says some rather hurtful things about how he is basically addicted to science and he's all alone. And those words, they hit him pretty hard. So he runs after her and asks her, "Can you please help me be more like you? I don't want to be alone." And being the loving big sister that she is, of course she accepts. So she takes them throughout their, well, it seems like a very, very widespread journey when they're really just going through the backyard and possibly a playground. But she's giving him a chance to get in touch with a side of himself that he doesn't normally explore. And it's going well at first. He's trying out new things. He is getting to be one with nature a little bit more than he's ever done before. But then, I don't know why in the world she thought this was a good idea. She brings him back to his lab and proceeds to have him just running through it, doing whatever he wants. At first, he's doing pretty well, nothing too crazy, but then it progresses in a way that actually terrifies Dee Dee to where he's actually destroying his own laboratory with the most maniacal, evil, destruction loving laugh and look on his face. Honestly, it kind of reminded me of Brian Fury from Tekken. Once Dee Dee actually snaps him out of it, she actually apologizes to him and breaks down, saying that it was not her place to try to change him, and is literally on her knees in tears begging for forgiveness. And you see on Dexter's face, he feels sad that she's so upset, and you can tell he has no sense of blame for whatever it was that actually happened. He asked her for help, and she helped him the best way that she could. But in a way, it started from her cutting down who he is as a person. So when he went to her for help, she, in her own way, was actually trying to change who he is as a person, not just giving him an extra chance to grow while still being true to who he is. Before Dexter can comfort her, she actually runs away crying and screaming to herself, asking, "What have I done?" And as Dexter looks around and sees all the destruction that he's created through his own laboratory, he puts his gloves back on, picks up his wrench, and gets to work repairing his laboratory. It's not happy, it's not jubilant, it's not even neutral. It's somber because at the end of the day, he is exactly where Dee Dee predicted he would be, alone in his laboratory with no one around, fixing equipment that nobody would ever even know existed besides him because he keeps it all a secret. And it shows that there are some aspects of people that, for all we want and try to instill in them, that just isn't a path meant for him. Honestly, it's a pretty hard lesson on accepting who you are as a person, accepting others, and giving them a chance to grow, but not trying to force them to change or conform to your path in life or what you define as something that is happy and fun. It is really, really impactful because of the lesson that it's trying to instill in such a subtle yet at the same time overt sort of way. Now, we have got to talk about Dexter's actual laboratory. That thing is absolutely the biggest plot hole I have seen throughout that entire series. For one thing, How hecking possible is it that he's kept that a secret from the general public for so long? Never mind his own parents who actually live in that house. First of all, the amount of electricity and energy that laboratory freaking pulls in. How in the heck have his parents not looked at their monthly utilities bill and seen that their electricity bill is into the stratosphere? There is no way that laboratory, as big as that thing is still off the grid. There is no way. How in the world have his parents not wondered, why is my electric bill $5,278.43? I'm pretty sure we haven't left any lights on for the last 7, 8 months straight. And not only that, but that humongous lab is the size of a small town, yet somehow in it fits behind a bookcase. I mean, I've always wondered, is that bookcase somehow a dimensional doorway into a parallel universe or some kind of pocket dimension? Because that's about the only thing that explains how the heck that dang laboratory fits in such a tiny little house. It's something that has always baffled me and driven me crazy. We cannot talk about how huge that laboratory is without talking about one big thing. Where in the everlasting heck is Dexter getting his equipment, his tools, his parts, his chemicals? The boy has a freaking nuclear reactor in that dang laboratory. Where is he getting this stuff? Who is funding him? I'm pretty sure his blue collar parents, and if I'm not mistaken, only the father actually works. No clue what he does. The mother's a stay at home mom. So, how in the everlasting anything is he able to afford all this stuff? And if he's not getting it with money, which there's no way he's not, where is he finding this stuff? I mean, there is no way he's getting all this stuff from the local landfill. I have never been able to figure that out, and it's always baffled me. I mean, for crying out loud, the guy's created a freaking Gundam-sized mech out of his, well, out of his laboratory, and that thing is absolutely huge. And he's built one for Dee Dee that was even bigger. And then on top of that, in one of the last episodes of the original series, he has to build a mech that is so big. It is basically full size Voltron or Power Rangers Megazord, where he has to have three other people helping him pilot the dang thing. How in the world does he get all the parts for this stuff? It makes no hecking sense. And to top all of that off, how in the world has he managed to keep this thing a secret from the general public, from his parents, from the hecking military? Because there is no way the military is not going to know about something like that. I mean, the amount of power that laboratory puts off and the robots that routinely fly in and out of that place, how has he not been brought in for some secret government facility or project or had all of his equipment and everything confiscated? That has something that has also baffled me. Although, as far as the secret thing, I actually just remembered that Dee Dee has more than once referenced that Dexter's had to erase people's memories. So I guess he has some Men in Black neuralizer type of thing that just, oh, you recognize I have a laboratory now? Okay, hey, take a look here, guys. Beep! That's honestly the only thing I can think of. But that also brings me back to my final point on this. If Dexter is so sick of Dee Dee running roughshod through his laboratory and he's already erased people's memories, why hasn't he ever done that to Dee Dee? I mean, there is no way he has not considered wiping her memories, so that she doesn't keep running into his laboratory? Or is it possible that she's either immune to that, or maybe he has erased her memories, but she keeps finding her way back in there, and after a while, he just stops doing that and just wants to try to keep her out? I don't know. That's something that has that's something that's never been explained. Dexter is somebody that in his own little way is defined by the characters that are around him. He's surrounded by people who actually enjoy having him around, who for all the times that he gets on their nerves or does things that upsets them, they still love him. But we also have Dexter's greatest enemy and most bitter rival, Mandark. From the moment he was introduced into this series, he has set out to mentally destroy Dexter and have him shut down his lab and prove himself as Dexter's intellectual, scientific superior on every level. And he very nearly succeeded too. If it wasn't for a chance meeting with Dexter's older sister Dee Dee, who Mandark instantly fell in love with, which, Dee Dee's kind of cute. I give him that. And, every little boy's going to have a crush. But the irony that he falls in love with his bitter enemy's big sister, that honestly cracks me up. And the fact that Dexter, right after he decided to shut down his lab because of Mandark's mental destruction of how superior he believes himself to be, Dexter had the most evil look on his face when he figured out a way to have Dee Dee destroying Mandark's lab instead of his own. The guy even toasted to his computer with some sparkling cider just to celebrate. Just to celebrate Dee Dee destroying his enemy's laboratory. That had me absolutely rolling. But back to Mandark. Now, we've seen the episode where he immediately sets out to defeat and destroy Dexter. But it's not until a later season where we're actually given the reason as to why. The episode, A Girl Named Sue. Now, the first thing I need to mention about this episode, he was literally born underwater. Let that sink in for a sec. His mother and his father, while she was in labor, were in a pond as she was literally delivering him. So he was literally birthed underwater, and then they just allowed him to float up to the surface. Now, these people are, I suppose the nicest term would be flower children. I don't want to say the word hippies because that's just degrading. But despite that, please explain to me how that is in any way, shape, or form a good idea. I mean, being near the pond, if it has fresh water, fine. But actually being inside the water where the baby is just plopped right on out and let to float to the surface, did it not occur to them that that baby might just drown as he's being born? I mean, that cannot in any way, shape, or form have been a smart idea. And honestly, in real life, he probably would have not made it to the surface. So I had to get that off my chest. Seeing that when I went back to rewatch the episode really kind of messed me up. Moving on, when that whole situation was cleaned up, his parents decided to name him Susan. Knowing he's a boy, they named him Susan. Now, I'm not going to judge because I have heard typically female names being given to male children, but I can't help but wonder why of all the names in the world did they go with that? The boy was practically raised almost as a girl despite being a boy. They gave him very not even gender neutral. They gave him pink clothes. They made him grow his hair out in a certain style. I'm at that point I'm pretty sure they were hoping for a girl and got a boy and they said we'll work with it and just make him think he's more of a girl. I don't know. That whole thing really touches on gender identity in a way that I am not qualified to discuss in this tiny little podcast. Years later, Mandark and his parents they eventually settle in next door to Dexter of all places, and Mandark actually meets Dexter with a accidental wrench to the head, by the way, which could have caused a concussion, but okay. Mandark has, from the day he was born, been obsessed with science and being the most evil little bugger possible. He meets Dexter, sees whatever machine that Dexter has most recently built. He's fascinated. Now, Dexter, in this particular episode, he was a little bit extra unnice. Let's call it that. Yeah, let's call him unnice because he immediately mocked Mandark. He assumed just because he thought Mandark was a girl, he could not possibly be smart. And even before he assumed Mandark was a girl, he assumed that Mandark could not possibly know anything about science, even when he told him, I love science. What does the guy do next? When Mandark tells him his name is Susan, Dexter starts laughing his head off. I mean, he literally falls to the ground, pounding the pavement from laughing so hard. And thus, Mandark finally snaps. He was pissed. That guy, he went home, he started breaking the flower based, loving items that his parents tried to instill in him. He changed his clothes, he cut his hair, and he was just ready to unleash hell on Dexter. That is how that bitter rivalry is created. Because Dexter, in his own arrogance, believed that no one could touch him, no one could be as smart as him, and almost no one he's never met before could possibly be as fascinated by science as him. And even if they were, they'd never be able to keep up. And that episode, after going back to rewatch it, really touches on how people have no idea the impact that they can have on another person. If Dexter had been at least neutral, or at the very least more polite and not so mocking and mean towards Mandark, it's hard to say if they would have actually been friends, but at the very least, they would not have been the bitter enemies that they wound up becoming. I want everyone to seriously, seriously think about when they meet someone, how they treat them, what they say to them, how they look at them, because you never know how, based on how somebody might look, you never know how they might be connected to someone or how they themselves might affect your life later down the line. Now, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up before I step back onto that soapbox. Dexter's Laboratory was and still is an amazing show that is so fun to revisit with amazing characters, amazing voice acting, even the occasional musical number. They had a literal opera episode for crying out loud that apparently was supposed to be about Dexter's origins, but I honestly didn't really quite pay attention to it because the music was just too much fun. It was so fun to watch. It was chock full of references that teetered just close enough to the line to real life things to avoid copyright issues, but It also didn't stray away from tougher topics like fitting in, being accepted by your peers, trying to be popular, accepting yourself and accepting others, and how big of an impact your actions, no matter how big or small they may be, can affect somebody else. I truly believe that Dexter's Lab wanted to teach us that it's okay to be different. It's okay to follow our own path. It's okay to stumble. It's okay to make mistakes because that's what's going to happen in life. You will make mistakes. You will make friends. You will make enemies. What's important is that you learn from those mistakes and even your successes, that you grow and adapt without trying to change who you are to fit somebody else. Because you can only be who you are. You can't fit somebody else's mold. Everyone has their own unique mold. Everyone is their own unique person with their own unique experiences, and that needs to be respected, or there could be catastrophic consequences. I sincerely hope you all take these lessons to heart. The next time you meet somebody, the next time you come in contact with someone you've known for a long time, just take an extra minute to think about how you treat them. It really costs nothing to be kinder to your fellow person. I absolutely hope you all enjoyed this episode's trip down memory lane to a beloved cartoon. I hope you take my lessons to heart and cannot wait for your next visit to my humble cafe. Until next time, be safe, be smart, be kind, be seeing you.